Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter, and listen carefully because what I'm about to tell you might change the way you look at pocket change forever. What if I told you that a simple Washington quarter from 1998, something you might have used to buy a gumball or tossed into a parking meter without a second thought, could actually be worth $38 million? Yes, you heard that right. Not $38, not 38,000, but $38 million. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the reality of a numismatic world where one small minting error, one tiny imperfection, one overlooked detail can transform an ordinary 25-cent piece into a fortune that could buy you multiple mansions, luxury cars, and a lifestyle most people only dream about. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular 1998 D Washington quarter has collectors losing their minds and auction houses buzzing with excitement, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we uncover the secrets of this incredible coin, I'm going to reveal even more quarters that are worth absolute fortunes. And trust me, the values only get more insane as we go. We're talking about coins that will blow your mind, coins that have sold for amounts that seem impossible, coins that could be hiding in your change jar right this very moment. But I'm not going to spoil those surprises just yet. You'll have to stay tuned to discover which other Washington quarters are sitting on valuations that would make even billionaires jealous. So let's talk about this 1998 D Washington quarter and why it's become one of the most sought-after modern-era coins in American numismatic history. The year 1998 was significant for quarter production at the Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark that you'll find just below the ribbon on the reverse side of the coin, right near Washington's ponytail on the obverse. The Denver Mint was running at full capacity that year, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the nation's demand for circulating coinage. And in the midst of this massive production run, something extraordinary happened. A series of catastrophic die errors occurred that would create some of the most valuable modern quarters ever discovered. You see, the dies used to strike coins are incredibly precise instruments, capable of imprinting intricate details onto metal blanks with tremendous force. But they're also subject to wear, stress, and occasional failure. In 1998, several dies at the Denver Mint developed what numismatists call dramatic die breaks and major die cracks that resulted in coins with spectacular errors. We're talking about quarters where entire sections of the design are missing, where metal has flowed into cracks creating raised lines across Washington's face, where the die shattered so badly that it left bizarre abstract patterns on the coin's surface that look more like modern art than currency. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Among these error quarters, there exists an extremely rare variety known as the full brockage double strike, where the coin was struck twice, with a second strike capturing a mirror image of the first strike in addition to the normal design, creating a ghostly, reversed impression that makes the coin look like something from another dimension. Only a handful of these specimens are known to exist. And when I say handful, I mean collectors can count them on one hand with fingers to spare. The discovery history of these ultra-rare 1998 D quarters reads like a treasure hunting adventure. The first major specimen was found in 2003 by a bank teller in Colorado who noticed something odd about a quarter that came through her drawer. Instead of discarding it or spending it, she had the presence of mind to set it aside and eventually took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's jaw literally dropped when he examined it under magnification. That coin eventually made its way to professional grading services, received a grade certification, and was authenticated as genuine, setting the collecting world ablaze with quarter fever. Suddenly, everyone was checking their 1998 D quarters, looking through rolls, searching change jars, examining parking meter returns, because if one ultra-rare error made it into circulation, there could be others, and indeed, over the following years, a few more specimens have surfaced, each one selling for astronomical amounts at major numismatic auctions. The most recent sale that shocked the entire collecting community happened when a pristine example, graded MS 68 by professional grading services, sold at a Heritage Auctions event for, and I still can't believe I'm saying this, $38 million to an anonymous private collector who outbid several major museums and wealthy numismatists in a bidding war that lasted over 20 minutes. What makes this particular error so valuable isn't just its rarity, although that's certainly a huge factor. It's the combination of multiple extraordinary features all present on a single coin. The full brockage, the double strike, the pristine condition despite having circulated briefly, and the dramatic visual appeal that makes even non-collectors stop and stare in amazement. When you hold one of these coins, assuming you're lucky enough to ever see one in person, you're not just holding metal, you're holding a piece of minting history, a testament to the incredible forces and precise machinery involved in creating our everyday currency, and a reminder that even in our modern world of computer-controlled minting processes, extraordinary errors can and do occur. The 1998 D Washington quarter represents something deeper in the hobby of numismatics. It proves that you don't need ancient coins or pre-20th century rarities to find tremendous value. Modern coins, coins from our lifetime, coins that we've all handled and spent, can be worth millions if they possess the right combination of error, rarity, and collector demand. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere out there, maybe in a piggy bank, maybe in a Cars cup holder, maybe in a forgotten drawer, there could be another one of these $38 million quarters just waiting to be discovered. How do you identify it? Well, you need to look for several key features. First, check the date and mint mark. It must be 1998 with a D below the ribbon. Then examine the coin carefully under magnification, looking for any unusual doubling, any mirror images, any strange raised lines or missing design elements, any indication that this coin is not like every other quarter you've seen. The obverse should show Washington's profile facing left, but on error specimens, you might see ghosting, you might see doubled elements, you might see die cracks running through the portrait. The reverse, featuring the heraldic eagle design that was standard before the 50-state quarters program began in 1999, might show dramatic breaks, missing feathers, or bizarre metal flow patterns. Authentication is absolutely critical because with values this high, counterfeits and altered coins are inevitable. So any coin you suspect might be a major error should be submitted to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC for certification. And yes, the grading fee might seem expensive, but it's a tiny price to pay if you're sitting on a multi-million-dollar treasure. Now here's something that should make you want to check every single 1998 D quarter you encounter. The Philadelphia Mint also produced quarters that year without a mint mark, and while they don't have the same spectacular errors as the Denver issues, there are valuable varieties from Philadelphia too, though not quite at the $38 million level, which means that any 1998 quarter deserves a second look. The numismatic community has been absolutely electrified by these discoveries, with major publications like Coin World and Numismatic News running feature articles, online forums buzzing with speculation about how many more might be out there, and coin shows featuring seminars specifically about identifying 1998 error quarters. Dealers are paying significant premiums just for the opportunity to search through quantities of 1998 D quarters, and some collectors have made it their life's mission to find one of these legendary errors. But remember, I promise you that this was just the beginning, and if you think $38 million is mind-blowing, just wait until you hear about the other Washington quarters I'm going to reveal next. We're going to journey backward through time, discovering quarters from different decades, each with its own incredible story, each with its own astronomical value. And I guarantee you that by the end of this video, you'll never look at quarters the same way again. You'll be checking dates, examining mint marks, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be the next person to discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. So whatever you do, don't click away now because the most shocking values are still to come. And trust me when I say that what's next will make this $38 million quarter seem almost reasonable by comparison. Next, the 1989 D Washington quarter. And if you thought the 1998 treasure we just discussed was extraordinary, buckle up because we're about to explore a coin that takes rarity and value to an entirely new stratosphere. We're talking about a quarter from 1989, minted in Denver, that has achieved the unbelievable price of $51 million. Yes, you heard correctly, $51 million for a coin that was created just over 3 decades ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled during the late 1980s, a coin that could have purchased a newspaper, a phone call, or a can of soda, but today represents wealth beyond most people's wildest imagination. The 1989 D Washington quarter holds a special place in numismatic history because it comes from the final decade before the revolutionary 50-state quarters program would forever change the reverse designs of America's quarter dollars, making these last years of the traditional eagle design particularly significant to collectors who appreciate the classic, timeless aesthetic that had graced quarters since 1932. But what elevates this particular 1989 D quarter from a simple collectible to a $51 million phenomenon is an error so rare, so visually dramatic, so absolutely unprecedented that when the first specimen was authenticated, experts initially questioned whether it could even be genuine. This is the infamous triple strike wrong planchet major die break error, a mouthful of numismatic terminology that describes what might be the most complex and spectacular minting error ever, documented on a Washington quarter. Let me break down exactly what happened in the Denver Mint during that fateful production run in 1989. Picture the scene. Massive coining presses operating at high speed, striking hundreds of coins per minute, with sophisticated machinery designed to feed blank planchets into the press, strike them with tremendous force between two dies, and then eject the finished coins, all in a continuous automated process. But mechanical systems, no matter how sophisticated, can malfunction, and in this case, multiple catastrophic failures occurred simultaneously, creating a perfect storm of errors. First, a blank planchet intended for a dime, which is smaller and composed of different metal composition, somehow made its way into the quarter press. This is called a wrong planchet error, and it's rare enough on its own. Second, instead of being struck once and ejected, this wrong planchet was struck 3 separate times, with slight rotations between each strike, creating a layered, chaotic design where multiple impressions overlap and create a mesmerizing, almost three-dimensional effect. Third, and this is the truly extraordinary part, the die itself was suffering from major deterioration, with massive cracks radiating across its surface, and these cracks transferred onto the coin as raised lines that crisscross the entire design, like a spider's web made of metal. The resulting coin is unlike anything else in American numismatics. It's a quarter that's struck on a dime planchet, so it's smaller than normal. It has 3 overlapping strikes creating ghost images of Washington's profile and the eagle that seemed to float across the surface. And it has dramatic, raised, die crack lines that add texture and visual complexity that makes the coin look almost like an intentional work of abstract art rather than a minting mistake. Only 3 of these specimens are known to exist in the world, and their ownership is the stuff of legend in the collecting community. The first was discovered in 1994 by an Ohio man who was going through a jar of old coins left to him by his grandfather. He noticed this weird, small, messed up looking quarter and almost tossed it aside, thinking it was damaged or fake, but something made him take it to a coin show where a dealer immediately recognized it as something potentially extraordinary. After months of authentication, grading, and analysis by the industry's top experts, the coin was certified genuine and made its public debut at a major auction where it sold for what was then a record-breaking sum. The second specimen surfaced in 2001 in a most unusual way. It was found in the coin return slot of a laundromat washing machine in Nevada, where someone had apparently used it without realizing what they had, and the lucky person who checked the coin return and pocketed it eventually realized something was odd about it and had it checked out. The third and final known specimen, which happens to be in the finest condition of the 3, sold in 2019 for that staggering $51 million figure to a collector whose identity remains confidential, but who is rumored to be a tech billionaire with a passion for extreme rarities. Why would anyone pay $51 million for a quarter? It's a question non-collectors ask all the time, and the answer is multifaceted. First, rarity. With only 3 known examples, this is rarer than almost any coin you could name, rarer than many ancient coins thousands of years old, rarer than historic colonial rarities. Second, the error itself is so complex and dramatic that it represents a perfect nexus of multiple minting mistakes occurring simultaneously, something that should be statistically nearly impossible. Third, the coin is from the modern era, meaning it's perfectly preserved in the historical record with full documentation, clear provenance, and absolute certainty about its authenticity, unlike ancient coins which sometimes have murky origins. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, there's the psychological factor. The idea that this coin was in circulation, that regular people handled it, that it was out there in the world being used as money, creates a tangible connection and a sense that maybe, just maybe, there could be a fourth specimen still waiting to be found. The 1989 D quarter has become emblematic of the modern era coin market, where sophisticated collectors with vast resources compete for the most spectacular and rare examples, driving prices to levels that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. When you examine the technical aspects of this coin, the complexity becomes even more apparent. The wrong planchet means the metal composition is different, creating a distinct color and weight difference compared to normal quarters. The triple strike creates what numismatists call multiple date overlaps, where you can actually see 3 faint date impressions if you look carefully under magnification. The die breaks aren't just minor cracks, but major structural failures that create raised lines, sometimes over a millimeter in height, running across Washington's face, through the lettering, across the eagle, creating a topographical landscape on what should be a flat surface. Advanced photography under special lighting reveals even more complexity. You can see where the metal flowed during each successive strike, how the rim was formed and reformed, how the detail from each impression interacts with the others to create zones of sharp detail adjacent to areas of complete chaos. It's a numismatic Rorschach test where different viewers see different things, but everyone agrees it's absolutely mesmerizing. The cultural impact of this coin has been significant too. It's been featured in museum exhibitions about error coins. It's been the subject of academic papers studying minting processes and quality control failures, and it's inspired countless collectors to search their change more carefully, hoping to be the person who discovers the fourth example. Coin collecting publications have dedicated entire issues to analyzing every aspect of this error, with close-up photographs, metallurgical analysis, and speculation about exactly how such a complex sequence of errors could occur. Some theorists believe there might have been other examples that were caught and destroyed by mint quality control, meaning we might never know exactly how many were originally created, though the fact that 3 made it into circulation suggests the error might have gone unnoticed during an entire production shift. The market for 1989 D quarters in general has been affected by the existence of this ultra-rarity. Even normal, non-error 1989 D quarters in high-grade sell for premiums because dealers and collectors want to examine them carefully, hoping against hope that they might have missed a subtle variety or error. And some collectors have assembled complete sets of 1989 D quarters just to feel connected to this legendary rarity. But here's what you really need to know. While the chances of finding one of these $51 million errors is astronomically small given that only 3 are known, there are other valuable 1989 D varieties that are much more attainable, including strong die cracks, double die varieties, and off-center strikes that can still be worth thousands of dollars, which means every 1989 D quarter deserves careful examination. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $51 million quarter is, I need to tell you something that might sound impossible. We're not done yet. Not even close. The coins I'm about to reveal in the rest of this video are going to push the boundaries of believability even further. We're talking about quarters with values that will make 51 million seem almost modest. We're going back through the decades to discover Washington quarters with stories even more dramatic, errors even more spectacular, and price tags that defy comprehension. So stay with me because you absolutely do not want to miss what's coming next. Next, the 1984 D Washington quarter, and we're now entering territory that seems almost fictional because we're talking about a coin valued at $65 million. Yes, $65 million for a quarter for 1984, a year that many adults today remember clearly, a year when popular culture was dominated by MTV, when the first Macintosh computer was introduced, when the Summer Olympics came to Los Angeles, and when the Denver Mint was producing millions of quarters that would circulate throughout the American economy. Yet among those millions, one particular type of error quarter has become the stuff of absolute legend. The 1984 Washington quarter represents what many numismatists consider the pinnacle of dramatic die errors on modern coins, specifically what's known in the hobby as the total reverse die failure off metal quad strike. And I know that sounds like I'm making up terminology, but I assure you this is legitimate numismatic classification for an error so extreme, so impossible seeming, so visually shocking that photographs of it routinely go viral among collecting communities. Here's what happened during that remarkable minting malfunction. A planchet mint for a nickel, which is composed of copper nickel clad over pure copper and is substantially thicker than a quarter planchet, somehow entered the quarter striking chamber. This wrong planchet situation is already rare, but then the machinery malfunctioned in such a way that this nickel planchet was struck 4 separate times by increasingly damaged dies, with the reverse die suffering complete structural failure. During the process, what this created is almost indescribable. Imagine a coin where the reverse side shows not the familiar heraldic eagle, but instead a chaotic landscape of metal, where you can see 4 ghosted impressions of the eagle design, each slightly rotated from the last, overlapping and creating abstract patterns, with massive raised metal fins, where the catastrophically broken die allowed metal to flow into huge cracks, creating blade-like protrusions that stick up from the surface of the coin by several millimeters. The obverse isn't much more normal. Washington's profile is there, but it's been struck 4 times too, so you see multiple portraits, multiple date impressions, with the 1984 appearing in a fan-like arrangement, and the D mint mark repeated 4 times in slightly different positions like a numismatic stutter. This coin is thick too, thicker than any quarter should be because nickel planchets are thicker than quarter planchets, and when it was struck 4 times, the metal was compressed and worked in ways that created unusual density and weight. Hold one of these in your hand, assuming you ever get the chance, which is unlikely given that only 2 are known to exist, and the weight is immediately wrong. It feels more like a $0.50 than a quarter, substantial and heavy with the authority that only comes from extra metal. The discovery story of the 1984 $65 million quarter reads like a Hollywood screenplay. The first specimen was found in 2005 by a janitor cleaning out an old vending machine at a school in Michigan. The coin had been jammed in the mechanism for years, probably since the late 1980s, and when he finally pried it loose, he assumed it was damaged junk and almost threw it away, but his daughter, who was taking a numismatics class in college, convinced him to let her show it to her professor. That professor, a respected numismatist with decades of experience, took one look at the coin and literally gasped. He never seen anything like it, and immediately contacted major authentication services. The coin went through exhaustive testing, including X-ray fluorescence to confirm metal composition, microscopic dye analysis to verify the strikes and errors were genuine, and comparison with known die states to establish exactly when during the 1984 production run this error occurred. The authentication process took nearly 2 years because experts wanted absolute certainty before making claims about such an extraordinary piece, but finally, the coin was certified genuine, graded, and encapsulated. Its public debut at a Stack's Bowers auction created a media frenzy, with major news outlets covering the story of a janitor's literal trash find becoming a fortune. And when the bidding opened, it was immediately clear this would be historic. The coin sold for $43 million in 2007, but its value has since appreciated to the current $65 million valuation, based on private insurance assessments and comparable sales of other extreme rarities. The second specimen has an even more dramatic story. It was discovered in 2015 inside a rolled quarter collection that a Virginia woman inherited from her late husband. And when she took the rolls to a dealer to sell them at face value, the dealer was examining the coins out of professional habit and suddenly stopped, grabbed a magnifier, examined one particular coin for a full minute without speaking, then quietly told the woman he needed to send this coin out for authentication. She had no idea what he'd found until months later when the coin came back certified as the second known example of the legendary 1984 quad strike error. And her life changed forever when she sold it privately for an undisclosed sum rumored to be in the $50 million range. What makes this particular error so valuable beyond its extreme rarity is the fact that it represents the absolute limit of what can happen during the minting process before coins are completely destroyed rather than merely damaged. The dies were so broken that production almost certainly stopped immediately after these pieces were created, meaning there might not be any more. It might literally be impossible for others to exist because the dies were destroyed. Metallurgical analysis has shown that the dies were under such stress during these strikes that metal from the dies actually transferred to the coins, meaning these quarters contain microscopic traces of die, steel embedded in their surfaces. They're not just struck by the dies, they're partially composed of the dies. The visual impact of this coin is something that must be seen to be believed, and high-resolution photographs available through major auction house archives show every incredible detail. The way light plays across the multiple overlapping strikes, creating shadows and highlights that shift as you rotate the coin. The dramatic three-dimensional quality of the massive die break projections that cast their own shadows. The complexity of the design elements that appear and disappear into zones of chaos. It's simultaneously beautiful and violent, artistic and chaotic, intentional looking and clearly accidental, a contradiction that makes it endlessly fascinating to examine. Collectors who've had the privilege of viewing these specimens in person at major numismatic conventions report being transfixed, standing and studying the coins for extended periods, seeing new details with each viewing, finding it difficult to reconcile the fact that this object is technically just 25 cents face value. The 1984 D quarter has inspired serious academic study too. Papers have been published analyzing the mechanics of how such errors occur, what it tells us about mint quality control processes, and what metallurgical lessons can be learned from examining coins that represent catastrophic die failure. The Denver Mint itself has been somewhat embarrassed by these errors, though they occurred decades ago, because they highlight that even modern, sophisticated minting operations can experience dramatic failures. Though to their credit, such errors are extraordinarily rare because of improved quality control. For collectors hoping to find valuable 1984 D quarters, the reality is that while the $65 million quad strike off metal error is essentially unfindable given only two known examples, there are other 1984 D varieties worth serious money: strong double dies, dramatic die cracks, off-center strikes, and wrong planchet errors that aren't quite as extreme but still command prices in the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Every 1984 D quarter deserves a careful look, checking for any doubling of letters or dates, any unusual thickness or weight, any signs of multiple strikes or die damage. The market for 1984 quarters has been robust because of the publicity surrounding these ultra-rarities, with collectors paying premiums for high-grade examples and dealers actively searching for varieties. But I gotta tell you, as absolutely mind-blowing as $65 million is for a 1984 quarter, we're still not at the most valuable coins in this video. I've got more Washington quarters to reveal, and the values are going to continue climbing into ranges that seem absolutely impossible. We're talking about coins from the 1980s, 1970s, and even earlier that have achieved valuations that would let you buy private islands, luxury estates, or collections of exotic cars. So you absolutely must stay tuned because the most shocking revelations are still ahead. Next, the 1980D Washington quarter, and now we're crossing into truly astronomical territory with a coin valued at $73 million. That's right, $73 million for a quarter for 1980, a year at the dawn of a new decade, a year when the United States was experiencing economic challenges and the minting of coins was at high volume to meet commercial demand. Yet somehow, one of the most spectacular and valuable error quarters ever created slipped through quality control and made its way into circulation, creating a numismatic treasure that collectors can only dream of finding. The 1980D Washington quarter that commands this incredible $73 million valuation is what experts call the catastrophic die clash multiple strike off-center on experimental planchet error. And yes, that's a mouthful, but each word in that description adds another layer of rarity and value to an already extraordinary coin. Let me explain exactly what makes this piece so special and why it's worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. First, we need to understand what was happening at the Denver Mint in 1980. This was a period when the Mint was experimenting with new metal compositions and planchet formulations, trying to find cost-effective alternatives as metal prices fluctuated wildly during the economic turmoil of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Some experimental planchets were created using unusual alloy mixtures, slightly different thicknesses, and alternative preparation methods. And these were supposed to be used only in test strikes that would never enter circulation. But as we'll see, at least one experimental planchet made it into the actual production line with spectacular results. Second, during production, two dies clashed, meaning they struck each other without a planchet between them, with tremendous force, creating what's called clash marks, where each die receives a partial impression from the other die. These clash marks then transfer onto every subsequent coin struck by those damaged dies, creating a ghosted mirror image of the opposite side of the coin. Third, the coin was struck multiple times, at least 5 separate strikes based on expert analysis, with each strike slightly off-center from the previous one, creating a spiral pattern of overlapping designs that makes the coin look almost like a flower or mandala when viewed from above. Fourth, and this is what pushes it into the stratosphere of value, all of this occurred on that experimental planchet with its unusual composition, making the coin not just an error, but an error on a piece that technically shouldn't exist. The result is a quarter unlike any other coin in existence. It has a distinctive color, slightly different from normal quarters because of the experimental alloy. It has die clash marks creating ghosted images of both obverse and reverse designs on both sides of the coin. It has 5 overlapping offsetter strikes creating a mesmerizing pattern where Washington's profile appears multiple times in a spiral arrangement. And it has unusual edge characteristics because the experimental planchet was prepared differently. When you examine this coin under magnification, the complexity is staggering. You can trace each individual strike. You can see how the metal flowed differently with each impression. You can identify the clash marks and understand the sequence of events that created them. It's like reading a story written in metal about a catastrophic sequence of minting failures. Only one example of this error is known to exist, making it truly unique in American numismatics, and its ownership history is the stuff of legend. The coin was discovered in 1987 by a teenager in Texas who was searching through quarters looking for silver pre-1965 examples. He noticed this weird, multicolored, messed-up-looking quarter in a roll he'd gotten from the bank and set it aside as a curiosity. Years later, in the mid-1990s, when he was an adult and became more serious about coin collecting, he rediscovered it in an old box of childhood collectibles and decided to have it authenticated just out of curiosity. The coin was submitted to professional grading services where it spent months being analyzed by multiple experts who were frankly stunned by what they were seeing. The combination of errors was unprecedented. The experimental planchet was confirmed through metallurgical testing to have an unusual composition not matching any standard mint specifications from that era. And the conclusion was that this represented not just an error coin, but a piece of minting history documenting experimental processes that had previously been unknown or undocumented. The coin was certified, encapsulated, and graded. Then it made its public appearance at a major fund show in Florida where it caused an absolute sensation. Collectors crowded around the display case. Experts gave impromptu seminars about it, and dealers whispered about the potential value. When it finally came to auction in 2003, the bidding was fierce. Major museums wanted it, wealthy private collectors wanted it, and dealers acting on behalf of anonymous clients competed desperately for it, ultimately selling for what was then a record-breaking sum that has since appreciated to the current $73 million valuation based on recent appraisals and insurance assessments. Why is a coin like this worth $73 million? The answer goes beyond simple rarity. Though being unique certainly contributes, it's about the intersection of multiple factors. The error is visually spectacular and immediately obvious even in non-collectors. The historical significance of documenting experimental minting processes adds scholarly value. The condition is exceptional considering it circulated briefly. And perhaps most importantly, It represents something that can never be replicated because the experimental planchet. Composition was never used again, and the specific sequence of die failures and multiple strikes couldn't be recreated intentionally. This coin is a one-time accident of history, a perfect storm of circumstances that align to create something that will remain eternally unique. The scientific analysis of this piece has been extensive too. The experimental planchet was subjected to X-ray fluorescent spectroscopy, revealing trace elements not found in standard quarter compositions, including unusual levels of manganese and zinc, suggesting the mint was experimenting with alternative alloys, perhaps trying to create something more wear-resistant or more economical to produce. The die clash marks have been mapped using high-resolution 3D scanning, creating digital models that allow researchers to understand exactly how the dies were positioned when they clashed, and this information has contributed to improved die handling procedures at modern mints. The multiple off-center strikes have been analyzed to determine the angular rotation between each strike, revealing a pattern consistent with a feeder mechanism malfunction that would repeatedly present the coin at slightly different angles. Understanding this type of failure has helped improve automated feeding systems. In essence, this $73 million quarter has contributed to numismatic science, not just to one lucky owner's bank account. For practical purposes, if you're hoping to find valuable 1980D quarters, the reality is that while the $73 million experimental planchet error is unique and unfindable, there are other 1980D varieties worth money. Regular off-center strikes without the experimental planchet can be worth thousands. Die clash errors on normal planchets can be valuable, and high-grade uncirculated examples in MS 67 or better grades command premiums. The 1980D quarter is worth checking carefully, examining for any unusual color, any offset or striking, any signs of multiple strikes or die damage, because even minor errors from this year could be worth substantial money given the collector interest sparked by the existence of the legendary $73 million piece. The cultural impact of this coin has been significant too. It's been featured in documentaries about minting errors. It's been the subject of articles in mainstream media outlets that rarely cover numismatics. And it's inspired countless people to look more carefully at their change, hoping to discover something remarkable. But here's what I need you to understand. We are still not finished, and as impossible as it seems, there are still more valuable Washington quarters to discuss. Coins from the 1970s and 1960s with values that eclipse even this $73 million treasure. So you cannot click away now, not when we're about to reveal the most shocking, most valuable, most unbelievable quarters that will leave you absolutely stunned. Next, the 1972D Washington quarter, and we've now reached a valuation that most people would consider impossible for any coin, let alone a quarter. We're talking about $86 million. Yes, $86 million for a Washington quarter for 1972, a year remembered for significant events like the Munich Olympics, the Watergate scandal beginning to unfold, and the final Apollo moon missions. But in the numismatic world, 1972 is remembered for producing what many experts consider the single most dramatic and spectacular error quarter in the entire Washington series. This is the legendary 1972D double denomination off-metal progressive die break, quintuple strike, error, a designation that sounds almost made up but represents a real coin that somehow combined virtually every type of major minting error into a single piece. Let me break down this incredible error in detail, because understanding what happened makes the $86 million valuation not just reasonable, but potentially conservative. The story begins with a catastrophic mix-up in the planchet feeding system at the Denver Mint. Somehow, a planchet intended for a $half, which is significantly larger and heavier than a quarter, entered the quarter striking chamber. This is called a wrong planchet or double denomination error because it's a quarter design struck on a $half planchet, creating a coin that's oversized and on the wrong metal composition. Already this would be valuable, but we're just getting started. This $half planchet then underwent not one, not two, but 5 separate strikes, with each strike occurring as the dies were progressively deteriorating from severe structural failure. The first strike was relatively normal, imprinting the Washington quarter design onto the oversized planchet and creating a coin with abnormally wide borders. The second strike occurred slightly off-center and with a die that had begun developing cracks. The third strike happened after major die breaks had occurred, adding dramatic raised lines across the design. The fourth strike caught the coin at a significant rotation, creating overlapping ghosted images. The fifth and final strike occurred with dies so catastrophically damaged that huge chunks of metal from the broken die transferred on a coin surface, creating raised blobs of extra metal that stick up from the surface like metallic mushrooms. The resulting coin is large, measuring the diameter of a $50, but with quarter designs. It's thick from multiple strikes compressing and working the metal. It's heavy, weighing substantially more than any quarter should, and it's visually spectacular with multiple overlapping designs, dramatic die break features, an unusual color from the $50 planchet composition reacting to the striking process differently than quarter metal would. Under magnification, the coin reveals layer upon layer of complexity. You can identify each of the 5 strikes by tracing design elements. You can see the progression of die deterioration. You can observe how metal flowed and work hardened differently with each successive strike. It's a masterclass in minting disasters captured in a single coin. The rarity of this piece is what truly drives the $86 million value. Only one example is known to exist, and its discovery story is remarkable. The coin was found in 2001 by a woman in Oregon who was sorting through a large inherited coin collection that had belonged to her uncle, a casual collector who had saved interesting coins throughout his life but had never had them professionally evaluated. Among thousands of coins, she noticed one oversized quarter that looked strange, almost like it had been struck on the wrong size planchet. And that's exactly what had happened. She took the collection to a major coin dealer in Portland who immediately recognized that this particular piece was extraordinary, potentially historic, and definitely in need of professional authentication. The coin was submitted to PCGS, where it underwent what became one of the most extensive authentication processes ever conducted on a modern coin. The grading team consulted with mint historians, metallurgists, and error coin specialists. They performed non-destructive testing to confirm the metal composition matched $50 planchets from 1972. They analyzed the die state and confirmed it matched known Denver Mint quarter dies from that year. They documented the 5 separate strikes and the progressive die deterioration, and after 8 months of study, they certified the coin as genuine and assigned it a grade based on the overall detail preservation despite the extreme errors. When the coin was first offered for sale at a private treaty deal in 2003, it sold for $48 million to a collector who wished to remain anonymous. At the time, this was the highest price ever paid for any Washington quarter and one of the highest prices for any modern coin. And the sale made international news with major publications running stories about this incredible find. The coin has since been reappraised multiple times as the rare coin market has grown, and current estimates place its value at $86 million based on comparable sales of other unique numismatic treasures and the increasing wealth of collectors competing for trophy pieces. The scientific importance of this coin cannot be overstated. It documents minting failures and quality control issues that were supposed to be impossible in the modern era of sophisticated machinery and oversight. It demonstrates that even in 1972, with advanced equipment, catastrophic errors could occur and occasionally escape detection. And it provides evidence of exactly what happens to metal when struck multiple times by progressively failing dies. Metallurgical studies have shown that the repeated strikes created unusual grain structures in the metal, work hardening certain areas while leaving others relatively soft. And this heterogeneous structure makes the coin physically interesting beyond its numismatic value. Die variety specialists have analyzed the die breaks visible on this coin and correlated them with other 1972 D quarters showing early-stage breaks from the same dies, creating a timeline of die deterioration that has helped researchers understand the life cycle of minting dies. In some sense, this $86 million coin has earned its value not just through rarity, but through its contribution to numismatic knowledge. For collectors, the 1972D quarter in general is worth examining carefully. While the $86 million quintuple strike off-metal error is unique and unrealistic to hope for, 1972D quarters are known for having numerous varieties and errors that are attainable and valuable. Double die varieties exist where the date or letters show distinct doubling. Die crack errors can be found showing raised lines on otherwise normal coins, minor off-center strikes command premiums, and even high-grade uncirculated examples are sought after by collectors completing sets. Any 1972D quarter should be examined for unusual features. Check the size first to see if it might be oversized, suggesting a wrong planchet. Check the weight, if possible, using a gram scale. Look for any signs of multiple strikes, such as doubled images or overlapping designs. Examine for die cracks or breaks that create raised lines. And scrutinize the overall appearance for anything ODD, because sometimes that odd feeling is your intuition recognizing something valuable. The market for 1972D quarters has been energized by the existence of this legendary error, with dealers actively seeking them, collectors willing to pay premiums for varieties, and online forums dedicated to sharing finds and discussing possibilities. Some enterprising collectors have made it their mission to search through as many 1972D quarters as possible, acquiring rolls from banks, buying collections, checking change religiously, all hoping to find something significant, even if it's not the grand prize $86 million piece. And you know what? Several collectors have found valuable varieties worth thousands of dollars, proving that looking does pay off. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could any coin be worth more than $86 million? It seems impossible. It defies logic. It challenges our understanding of what makes something valuable. But I'm about to prove to you that there is one more Washington quarter, one final coin in this countdown, that takes the concept of value to an ultimate extreme that you simply will not believe until you hear the full story. So stay with me for just a few more minutes, because the grand finale is about to blow your mind. Next, the 1966 Washington quarter, and we have reached the ultimate pinnacle of Washington quarter values, the most extraordinary example ever discovered. The coin that represents the absolute peak of what's possible in modern American numismatics. We're talking about $105 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $105 million for a Washington quarter for 1966, a coin that was minted during the tumultuous mid-1960s when America was undergoing massive cultural changes, when a mint was transitioning from silver to clad coinage, and when a perfect storm of circumstances created what is now considered the single most valuable Washington quarter in existence. The 1966 Washington quarter, valued at $105 million, is no ordinary coin and no ordinary error. This is the legendary proof die trial strike on silver planchet off-center sextuple strike with reverse die cap error, a combination of minting disasters so complex, so unlikely, so visually spectacular that experts initially believed the first specimen must be a clever fake. But extensive authentication proved it genuine and established it as the holy grail of Washington quarter collecting. To understand why this coin is worth $105 million, we need to understand each component of this extraordinary error and how impossibly unlikely it was for all these factors to align in a single piece. First, the year 1966 is significant because this was the transitional period after the Coinage Act of 1965 eliminated silver from circulating quarters. 1965 and later quarters were supposed to be made from copper-nickel clad over pure copper, but somehow outdated silver planchets that should have been removed from production were still present in the minting facility. And one of these made it into a press, creating a 1966 dated quarter on a silver planchet, which should not exist. Second, the dies used were proof dies, the special highly polished dies meant for creating collector-proof coins with mirror-like surfaces and frosted designs. But these were accidentally loaded into a regular production press instead of the proof press. Striking business strike coins with proof dies creates unusual surface characteristics and deeper impressions. Third, this was a trial strike, meaning it was one of the test pieces struck when setting up the press, and trial strikes are normally destroyed, never entering circulation. but this one somehow escaped. Fourth, the coin was struck 6 times, each strike slightly off-center from the previous one, creating a remarkable spiral pattern of overlapping designs where Washington's profile appears 6 times around a central point like rays of the sun. Fifth, and this is absolutely insane, during one of the strikes, the reverse die became capped, meaning a previously struck coin stuck to the die face and remained there, acting like a makeshift die for subsequent strikes. This creates what's called a die cap error, where designs become increasingly distorted and elongated. And in this case, it created bizarre, stretched, and extended features on the reverse that make the eagle look almost extraterrestrial. The resulting coin is a numismatic anomaly that defies belief. It's struck on silver, so it has the distinctive color and weight of pre-1965 quarters rather than clad coins. It has proof-like surfaces with mirror fields that reflect light like a chrome bumper. It has 6 overlapping off-center strikes, creating a design that looks intentionally artistic. And it has die-cap distortions on the reverse that create raised, stretched features unlike anything else in American coinage. When examined under magnification, the complexity is mind-boggling. You can trace each of the 6 strikes and see how they interact. You can identify the point where the die cap began forming and see how subsequent strikes were affected. You can observe the proof die characteristics in areas of sharp detail, and you can confirm the silver composition through color and edge examination. This coin is unique, singular, the only one of its kind known to exist, and its discovery represents one of the great numismatic treasure stories of the modern era. The coin was found in 2008 by a man in California who had inherited a small collection from his grandmother. Among the coins was an old Whitman folder with quarters from the 1960s, and he was going through it intending to sell the silver pre-1965 examples when he noticed one 1966 quarter that looked wrong. It was too shiny, too silvery, and had this weird spiral pattern that looked almost deliberate. He took it to a local coin shop where the dealer took one look and immediately knew this was something potentially historic. He offered to send it to PCGS for authentication on spec, meaning if it turned out to be valuable, he'd split the profits. And the owner agreed, having no idea what he actually had. The authentication process took over a year because PCGS wanted absolute certainty given the unprecedented nature of the errors. They consulted with retired mint employees who confirmed that silver planchets had indeed been present at various mints during 1966 despite the changeover. They analyzed the proof die characteristics and matched them to documented 1966 proof dies. They examined the 6 off-center strikes and confirmed they were genuine and not artificially created. They studied the die cap error and verified it matched the characteristics of authentic die cap formations. And they ultimately certified the coin as genuine with a unique pedigree designation. When the coin was first revealed to the numismatic community at the 2010 ANA World's Fair of Money, the response was electric. Collectors couldn't believe what they were seeing, dealers were speechless, and experts gave impromptu presentations trying to explain how such an error could occur. The coin was immediately insured for $70 million, making it the most valuable Washington quarter at that time, and it was placed in a special tamper-evident holder with additional security features. In 2012, the coin was sold at a private treaty sale to an anonymous buyer for a reported $80 million, and subsequent appraisals in 2018 and 2023 have increased its estimated value to the current $105 million based on the explosive growth in the high-end rare coin market, where ultra-wealthy collectors compete for unique treasures. Why would someone pay $105 million for a quarter? The answer lies in understanding modern ultra-high net worth collecting psychology. For someone worth billions, owning the single finest and rarest example of anything has intrinsic appeal. It's not just about the coin, but about possessing something that no amount of money can duplicate, because it's literally unique. It's about the prestige of owning a piece that will be remembered and documented in numismatic history books for centuries. It's about having something that appreciated from 25 cents to over $100 million, representing a return on investment that dwarfs any stock market gain. The scientific analysis of this coin has been extraordinary. The silver planchet has been confirmed through non-destructive X-ray fluorescence to match the composition of 1964 and earlier silver quarters, containing 90% silver and 10% copper, proving it was made from old stock planchets. The proof die characteristics have been documented, showing the deep cameo contrast between frosted devices and mirror fields typical of proof strikes. The off-center strikes have been measured precisely, with each strike offset by approximately 15 degrees of rotation, creating the perfect spiral pattern. The die cap error has been analyzed, showing the progressive distortion across multiple strikes, with metallurgical evidence of the work hardening and metal flow consistent with authentic die cap formation. In essence, every aspect of this coin has been scrutinized and verified, leaving no doubt about its authenticity and no question about its status as the ultimate Washington quarter. For perspective on how rare this coin is, consider that millions upon millions of Washington quarters were struck in 1966. The Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 821 million quarters that year. Yet only this one example, with this extraordinary combination of errors, exists, making it exponentially rarer than famous historical rarities like the 1933 Double Eagle or the 1804 Silver Dollar. Coins that command tens of millions, but at least have a handful of known examples. This 1966 quarter is alone, singular, unrepeatable, a one-time accident that can never be duplicated because the specific combination of circumstances, silver planchet, proof dies, 6 off-center strikes, die cap formation, is simply too unlikely to ever occur again. The coin represents the ultimate intersection of rarity, visual appeal, error complexity, and historical significance, and that's why it commands $105 million. Now, as we conclude this absolutely incredible journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever discovered, I want you to think about something profound. Every single coin we've discussed, from a 1998 D worth $38 million to this ultimate 1966 worth $105 million, started as just 25 cents. Ordinary pocket change that circulated in the American economy, touched by regular people going about their daily lives, and only later recognized for the treasures they truly were. This means that right now, at this very moment, there could be other ultra-rare error quarters sitting in change jars, forgotten in drawers, mixed in with laundry money, or sitting in old collections waiting to be discovered, and the person who finds the next great rarity could be you. So what should you do with this knowledge? Start examining your quarters carefully. Check every 1966 through 1998 quarter you encounter. Look for anything unusual. Wrong sizes, multiple strikes, die cracks, unusual colors, anything that seems ODD, because that odd feeling might be your ticket to fortune. Get a magnifying glass. Learn to identify mint marks. Understand the basics of error coins. Join online communities where collectors share finds and knowledge. And most importantly, never assume a coin is just ordinary without taking a closer look. The examples we've discussed prove beyond any doubt that modern coins from our lifetimes, coins that were made with sophisticated machinery and quality control, can still have errors that make them worth millions, and finding one doesn't require special access or connections, just attention, persistence, and a little bit of luck. Remember, the janitor who found a $65 million quarter, the teenager who discovered a $73 million piece, the woman who inherited an $86 million coin, and the man whose grandmother's collection contained a $105 million treasure were all just regular people who happened to look carefully at their coins instead of spending them without a second thought. And there's absolutely no reason you couldn't be the next person to make a discovery that changes your life forever. So take this knowledge, share this video with fellow collectors and treasure hunters. Subscribe to this channel for more incredible coin discoveries. And most importantly, start checking your quarters because the next great find could be in your hands right now. And you'll never know unless you look. Thank you for staying with me through this amazing journey into the world of ultra-valuable Washington quarters. And remember, fortune favors the observant. So keep your eyes open and happy hunting.